You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. In the churning waters of the Western Mediterranean, the islands of Sardinia and Corsica stood as pivotal battlegrounds, trade outposts, and cultural crossroads for centuries. For Carthage, these islands were more than just stepping stones between Africa and Europe. They were critical components in its imperial and commercial strategy. The Carthaginians, heirs to Phoenician seafaring prowess, had already established a presence in the central and western Mediterranean by the 7th and 6th centuries BC. They likely began exerting influence over Sardinia and Corsica during this early period, first through trade networks, and then through increasing military and political involvement, as the Phoenician homeland in the Levant fell under foreign control. By the late 6th century BC, Carthage had become the dominant Punic power, and its ambitions were turning westward. Sardinia and Corsica offered significant rewards: fertile land for agriculture, mineral wealth, particularly in Sardinia's mines, and crucially, naval dominance over the Tyrrhenian Sea. Controlling these islands would allow Carthage to protect its western trade routes from Greek and Etruscan competition, while also ensuring a buffer against encroaching powers. But the islands were not empty. Sardinia was home to the Nuragic civilization, a resilient ancient society known for its massive stone towers, or nuraghe, and for its warrior traditions. Carthaginian expansion in Sardinia likely began with the coastal settlements, many of which had already seen Phoenician contact. Over time, these outposts became fortified colonies, and Carthage began pressing inward. Resistance was fierce. The interior of Sardinia remained difficult to control throughout Carthaginian rule, with periodic uprisings and guerrilla warfare by local tribes. Corsica, meanwhile, was a wilder and less economically developed island, inhabited by diverse native groups that resisted external control. Though Carthage established footholds there, its hold was always weaker than in Sardinia. Still, Corsica held strategic importance due to its proximity to Etruria and Liguria, key regions of Italic power. Carthaginian control over the islands became especially important as the Greeks, especially those from Massalia and Phocea, pushed westward. Naval clashes were frequent, and the islands served as bases for both commerce and conflict. By the 5th century BC, Carthage had solidified its dominance over Sardinia's coastal regions, building temples, harbors, and administrative centers in Punic architectural styles. Carthaginian influence seeped into local culture, blending Punic religion, language, and governance with the native traditions. Sardinia, in particular, became deeply entwined with the Punic world, serving as a source of grain, metals, and soldiers. Yet Carthaginian rule was never absolute. The mountainous interiors of both islands continued to resist full subjugation. Carthage often employed indirect rule, striking deals with local elites, or using garrisons to maintain control over key towns and roads. In times of rebellion, punitive campaigns were launched to pacify the interior, but unrest simmered throughout their centuries of control. The economic importance of Sardinia and Corsica is reflected in the Roman obsession with them during and after the Punic Wars. When Rome eventually took the islands from Carthage in the First Punic War, it wasn't simply about conquest. It was about disrupting Carthage's agricultural and naval networks. Sardinia and Corsica would become Roman provinces, but much of their Punic legacy remained, from settlement names to cultural practices. Carthage's presence on these islands illustrates the dual nature of its empire, part commercial, part militaristic, part cooperative, part coercive. The islands also show the Punic genius for integration. Carthage did not seek to erase local identities, but to dominate and direct them, plugging diverse peoples into a Mediterranean system of trade, tribute, and tribute extraction. Even as the city of Carthage faced existential threats from Rome, the islands continued to function as agricultural and logistical hubs. Sardinian grain fed armies, Corsican timber supplied fleets. These were not peripheral holdings. They were essential gears in the machinery of Punic imperial power. And after Carthage's fall, Roman writers would reflect on the islands with a kind of haunted reverence, aware that their Punic past had shaped the strategic and cultural contours of these lands. Today, the remains of Punic settlements, inscriptions, and artifacts across Sardinia especially offer a vivid reminder of Carthage's reach. In the stones of Theros and Nora, in the fusion of native and Semitic deities, in the stubborn resistance of highland tribes, we see the Carthaginian story written not just in Africa but across the seas, on islands that bore the weight of Punic ambition and the scars of its collapse.